have with the Norman conquest of Ireland is that we kind of act like it was a huge Norman victory. Let me kind of like build up on that. We kind of act like the Normans kind of like won when they didn't. All their goals that they wanted to achieve, they failed. like, for example, one example that people default think that the Normans wanted to achieve was to have an English king as King of Ireland, and of course that never happened at the time. Yes, it would happen, what, 600 years after the Norman conquest? But that's way after the Norman conquest. So that literally, by default, tells you that the Norman conquest itself was a failure. Yeah, you could argue, yeah, but 600 years later they got the crown. They eventually did become, King of Ireland. And I'm thinking to myself, as a historian, looking at the Norman conquest of Ireland, I'm like, yeah, 600 years afterwards, you could say anybody's the ruler of Ireland 600 years after what you're arguing about. And it's the same with their other main goal, which is to have a king amongst themselves, a king of the Normans. I think the closest one to that was Hugh de Lacy. And of course, he was assassinated. So that means that both goals, the goal of either having a king of England on the Irish crown or having the Norman to be King of Ireland, both of them failed. The closest one to become King of Ireland was King John II of England. He failed because he got bullied out of it by Hugh de Lacy. So that really does highlight the fact that both of them were a failure. So anytime somebody tries to argue, it's not even an argument. We just kind of pretend when somebody says the Norman conquest of Ireland, we kind of pretend it was a success so that we can quickly skip through the medieval Irish history and get to the present history. And then that could explain, okay, so why are the English in Ireland? And it actually doesn't explain a thing. It gives us a foundation. But one could easily argue, is it even a good foundation? Especially at the fact that the Normans themselves weren't English. The Normans had taken over England back in 1066. If you know anything to do with medieval history, that 1066, that should be the key that you know. So of course, at the time, England wasn't even England. It was the Anjou Empire. It was ran by Henry II. The Norman conquest is always brought in as an introduction to the English conquest of Ireland. And what I'm trying to say here is that everybody has this notion of 800 years of British occupation. And so the Norman conquest is kind of used as an explanation to why the English are in Ireland. Although it's very poorly done because we kind of run through it. The opening introduction is really awesome to the Norman conquest of Ireland because we have these awesome battles at the start. The Battle of Waterford, the Battle of Dublin, the Battle of Thurles. So we have all these awesome battles in 1170 up to 1180. And then suddenly it just kind of fizzles out. The Norman conquest of Ireland doesn't even have a proper end of year date. You could easily argue it goes on from 1170 all the way up to 1250, and that's a very long time. Especially a war that just kind of drags and drags and drags on some more. But we talk about it like the Normans themselves were successful in Ireland, and they weren't. The Normans slowly but surely were poisoned and they died. They fell apart over time. They either became a part of the Gaelic society, or from 1250 onwards, under Henry III, they were defined as Englishmen and became part of the English society. And as we go into the Scottish War of Independence and the 100 Years' War, the English are slowly but surely completely pushed out of the country. And by the time we get up to 1450, the end of the medieval period, the English are completely pushed out of it. Like the majority of Dublin does not speak English by the time we get up to 1450. The majority of people living in Dublin are speaking Gaelic. The majority of the Irish Parliament are also speaking Gaelic, or Gaelga as it was turning into, by 1450. So in many ways, even throughout the entire medieval period, the Norman Conquest of Ireland was a complete failure. So it's very funny that even today we talk about it like the Norman Conquest of Ireland was a success.